This is kind of a question that has become a little bit more fun to talk about as the season has worn on. We're in week 8, and don't look now, but there is a possibility now where we have 5 undefeated conference champions. Now, do the math. We only have 4 college football playoff spots. So let's just say we have 5 conference champions, all undefeated, 4 spots. Who's the team that gets left out? Well, I asked y'all on Twitter, at JD Piquel, got a lot of great responses from y'all. And I decided this was something that we probably should unpack together. Now, to be real, I don't know that we actually get this scenario. I'd be surprised if we had all 5 that were undefeated at the end of the year. But even so, if it were to happen, who would be the school that's outside looking in? Or the conference, rather, that's outside looking in. We'll break it down right now. Really quickly, though, make sure you subscribe right here to the On3 YouTube channel. It's college football every single day. This is the hard count. If you're watching this as a one-off video a little bit later in your day, this is from the live show. We do a live show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern to get your college football week kind of revved up. A ton of content for you on Sunday, the morning after. Make sure you're dialed in here. There's a lot of other great shows that have college football content for you. We like to think that we are unique in the sense that we do college football content the way that you want to see it, the way that you want to talk about it. Like, we're the exact same. We're watching college football from 7 a.m. when game day starts, wherever you're at, all the way till Pac-12 after dark. Like, we are watching the same thing. We're dialed in, all right? So we appreciate y'all being dialed in with us. So, who could it be? Is kind of the question I want to go with as we talk about this whole conference championship undefeated conversation around the college football playoff. Let's just go conference by conference here. Could it be the Big Ten? The Big Ten, in terms of candidates for undefeateds, would be Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. I'll just say this. It will not be this conference. This conference will not be left out of the college football playoff. Let's go school by school here. If Michigan runs the table and they're undefeated, they have probably 2 top 10 wins. Maybe Maryland is ranked towards the end of the year and you get a 3rd ranked win in there, and then you play the Big Ten title game. Like, Michigan starting the year at number 2 in the rankings pretty much across the board. If you go wire to wire and you're the 2nd best team in the country, you're not going to get left out of the playoff. So there's that. Ohio State, you would likely have 3 top 10 wins should they run the table. Ohio State, Joel Klatt said this on his podcast the other day, and I 100% agree with it. Ohio State, if they beat Penn State this weekend, they probably have the best resume in college football. If they run the table and they beat Michigan, I think they have a case for probably the number 1 seed when it comes to the college football playoff. So Ohio State, Michigan, neither of those teams are getting left out. Penn State, they would have 2 top 3 wins. Yes, 2 top 3 wins if they run the table, likely. And they would have a Power 5 win over West Virginia. So, as it stands right now, the Big Ten, they're pretty much locked in. Whether it's Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, any undefeated conference champ from the Big Ten, punch your ticket, you're in the dance. Now, the ACC is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Florida State, should they run the table, would have a ranked win over LSU, who was number 5 at the time. They would have a ranked win over Duke, which they played this weekend, the number 16 in the country right now. And I think the Clemson win has to count for something. Like, say what you want about Clemson, where they're at right now and how that win ages. I think the way that they won in Death Valley, former ACC champ, like, I think that probably has to factor into some degree to their resume. Now, the other team that could be in play here for the ACC. Don't look now, but Mac Brown's got the boys rolling in North Carolina. Drake May, he's doing what he does, slinging the pill like a shady pharmacist. And that defense, we talked about it yesterday. That we have them in our top 10 right now in the nothing but ball poll. And they're better. Like, that's the perfect thing that you wanted to hear if you're in Chapel Hill. The defense just a little bit better, allowing 21 points a game. If they run the table, they have a ranked win over Miami. Maybe Duke is ranked when you play them and beat them. Maybe Clemson is ranked when you play them and beat them. But in actuality, you probably have a world where both these teams meet for the ACC title. And in a perfect world, they're both undefeated if you're rooting for the ACC to get in. So I'll say this. If either team makes it to the ACC title game undefeated, you feel pretty good about your chances. Now, I could also see, or I shouldn't say this, I couldn't see this happening, but this is a potential nightmare scenario for the ACC. If the ACC title game is a scenario where Florida State does not make it, meaning they lost 2 of the following 4 games. They lost to either Duke, Wake Forest, Pitt, Miami. Like somehow they went 2-2 in that stretch, and they're not in the ACC title game. I think that puts the ACC in a bit of a predicament because at that point in time, North Carolina's resume is a ranked win over top 25 Miami, who was 25 at the time, and then maybe it's like a top 15 win over, I don't know, Louisville. Like that would make me a little bit concerned. I think North Carolina is in real danger of being left out if they're the conference champ. Now, if Florida State runs the table, undefeated conference champ, they're not getting left out. So the ACC is a school that a operation rather, that I think is potentially on the outside looking in if it's not Florida State. So we'll circle back to that here just a little bit later in this operation, but that would be bad news when it comes to the ACC if North Carolina were to win the conference and not play Florida State in the ACC title game, and they could maybe be left out. So we'll talk about that. The ACC is one that I don't see being locked in for the college football playoff, depending on the champion. Again, if Florida State runs the table and they're undefeated, they will be in the dance. Period, mic drop, the end. Now, for the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is sneaky, man. Everybody told us before the year, if it's a one-loss conference champ, they're probably not getting in. Hey, the Pac-12, we'll see if they can do it. If they can find a way of getting in, we'll see. Like, it's going to be just cannibalization over there. There's one team still standing over there, and that's the Washington Huskies. Undefeated, just beat Oregon, a good Oregon team, mind you. Took them to the very last play. And if Washington runs the table and goes undefeated, they are in the dance. Not just because of Michael Penix Jr., or not just because of, the Oregon win. Like, the resume itself would be phenomenal. They'd have a top 10 win against Oregon. They'd have a win at USC, and you would imagine USC, depending on what happens this Saturday, they're probably ranked. At Oregon State, probably ranked. Potentially, they have 3 ranked wins plus a top 10 win, and then maybe another big-time win in the conference title game, depending on who they see there. So there's no chance that Washington gets left out if they run the table. So at this point in time, we got the Big Ten locked in. We got the Pac-12 locked in. The ACC is locked in if it's Florida State. If it's not, we'll see. The SEC is one to talk about because everyone's saying how bad the SEC is this year. The SEC is down. Bama's not Bama this year. What's up with LSU? Y'all, if Georgia runs the table and they go undefeated, they are not getting left out. Same thing I said about Michigan is true about Georgia. You don't start the year at number 1 and go wire to wire winning all your games, and then somehow you're on the outside looking in. Like, that's not a reality that would happen for Georgia. Now, to be real, Georgia also, if they were to win out, would have a nice little padding, I think, when it comes to the ranked wins department. They could potentially have 3 to 4 ranked wins plus whatever happens in the SEC title game. Bottom line, the SEC, you're not getting left out. So we'll keep on moving there. Now, the Big 12 is interesting. If the Big 12 gets a team into the college football playoff that's undefeated as a conference champ, it would be Oklahoma. They would have a top 3 win against Texas. Maybe, just maybe, you're rooting and hoping and praying for the good folks in Morgantown, West Virginia to get on the winning side of things consistently, and maybe you play them when they're ranked. I don't know. It's a big question mark. But this is where it gets a little bit tricky. The doomsday scenario is that you play Texas in the Big 12 title game, and they're ranked again, and you beat them, but Florida State has wins over a top 5 LSU, potentially a top 10 North Carolina, and then a win over Duke. The resumes, to me, I think favor Florida State if they're undefeated and Oklahoma's undefeated. Now, to be real, I do not hope this happens. I hope that Oklahoma somehow finds a way in, whether they're undefeated, whether they're not. Like, we stand Brent Venables on here. I would love to see Oklahoma in the dance. But if this is the scenario that happens, and you got to take undefeated Florida State versus an undefeated Oklahoma, it's not Oklahoma's fault the Big 12's down this year. It's not their fault that they don't have anybody in conference that's not helping them. But the conference play of the ACC to this point with Duke and North Carolina, and the way that could potentially shape up for Florida State, should North Carolina play Florida State for the title game, and the non-conference win rather over LSU when they were top 5 in the country, I think you could see Oklahoma being left out. And that hurts me to my core. Sooner fans, y'all have been with us since the beginning of this thing. I would hate to see that happen, But I think they would be on the outside looking in because you have your two wins are in conference play against the same team, and you got a non-conference win, and you're an undefeated team in the Florida State that has more ranked wins. So that would, I think, give me some concern if I'm an Oklahoma fan. Now, to be real, if it's North Carolina, I think they're on the outside looking in from the ACC. Oklahoma goes undefeated. North Carolina goes undefeated. I think Oklahoma gets in over North Carolina in that situation by nature of what we just said. Oklahoma has better wins. North Carolina, their win is over maybe Florida State. Maybe it's not. But at that point in time, you're taking a top 25 win from Miami, and then I guess you have a top 10 win against Florida State. But at that point in time, you're like, hey, I got to give the nod to Oklahoma if it's me. So bottom line, I think North Carolina's in danger. I think the ACC's in danger if it is North Carolina. If it's not, if it's Florida State running the table, then I think Oklahoma would be the undefeated team that gets left out. So, to be real with y'all, we don't root for this happening. I think college football will take care of itself, and we will have a couple of conference champs with one loss, and it'll be great. We'll get here on Selection Sunday and chop it up and kind of figure out where this thing should stand. I would also say this, though. The majority of the time, like 95% of the time, it's pretty clear who the top four teams are by nature of the way the records have, put themselves into a pecking order and the way these resumes shake out. I don't think there's a ton of controversy usually on Selection Sunday, and that's one of the reasons why we think that the 4-team playoff is just fine. But I digress. That's the way we see this thing shaking out. Get at me in the live chat. Get at me in the comment section. Let me know how y'all would see this whole thing shaping up if we do get 5 undefeated conference champions. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.